Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. The country's leading pollster, the best at what he does, the chief number cruncher extraordinaire, is a man called Professor Sir John Curtice. You'll know him. The BBC wheel him out every time there's an election. He sits and looks at sometimes the smallest data sets and makes unerringly accurate predictions. He'll say there's a 7% swing to the Tories. They're going to win and have a majority of 90 or some such. He is accurate every time. He never gets it wrong. And indeed, his word is such that when he speaks, people listen. Serious people take what he says very seriously indeed. And as the country's leading pollster, as the man who knows what's going on, he's applied his massive brain and he's come up with something that we all know, but we only know it because instinct or intuition. He knows it because he's crunched the numbers and he says empirically this is the problem. And what he is saying is all the failures of the SNP, all the polling disasters, all the losses of the seats that's been fought, all the predicted losses for the future, the falling numbers of memberships, everything, every single metric by which you can fail, and they have failed, can be laid at the door of one man. And it's the one man we all know who we're talking about, don't we? Because it is, of course, Humza Yousaf. The big-brained professor is basically blaming one man for the entire failure of the SNP. And as I say, when Professor Curtice speaks, a wise man listens. Let's have a look at what he's saying and let's see what Humza's reaction may well be. Here goes. So Humza Yousaf is the main culprit for the SNP's poll disasters, says country's leading pollster. The SNP's new leader lacks the charisma of Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond and must bear the brunt of the blame for the party's dramatic collapse in popularity among Scots voters. You see, the party voted for him because they didn't want they didn't want to upset Nicola mainly, but they must have known that he was a complete idiot. They must have known he's failed at everything he's done. He's failed upwards every time. But in the first round, most people didn't vote for him, of course, which is appalling. But anyway, Professor Sir John Curtice has blamed Humza Yousaf for the SNP's dramatic slump in popularity, rather than Nicola Sturgeon's arrest and the ongoing police investigation into party finances. Do you have all this crap going on in the background? He keeps saying, with all this going on, it's fairly difficult, blah, blah, blah. The fact is, people actually don't care so much about Nicola Sturgeon and about the problems that the party's having with its finances. The biggest problem the party has is Humza Yousaf. Startling, isn't it? So, the electoral expert said that the Snats have collapsed from a dominant position just 12 months ago, when Sturgeon was in charge, to the extent where they are in danger of losing power at the next Holyrood election to a resurgent Scottish Labour. Support has plummeted from around 45% to around 36%, he said, with Labour now at around 34%. And indeed, with a little bit of tactical voting with the Tories and the Lib Dems, it is more than possible that Labour would be the party of government in Scotland at the next election. Anything other than the SNP is going to be an improvement. Anyway, he argued that the arrest of Miss Sturgeon and her husband Peter Murrell, who have since been released for that charge, was not the main catalyst for the steep decline in the SNP's polls ratings. He also said the row over gender reform and the UK Supreme Court ruling on the second Skexit referendum had not been major factors either. Now, that means that they had some effect, sure, but they weren't the main weight factor. They weren't the main thing pulling voters away. Writing for the Byline Scotland website, he said, that leaves one potential main culprit of the SNP's current difficulties: the SNP leadership contest. The election of a new leader usually gives their party a boost in the polls, but of this there was no sign at all following Yousaf's success in that victory, winning that leadership contest. There was no honeymoon period. There was no period of grace. There was no uplift. Professor Curtice argued that while public opinion was divided about Miss Sturgeon, Yousaf, in contrast, is relatively unpopular. There are nearly 3 people who feel unfavourably about him for every 2 that regard him favourably. Yousaf's relative lack of popularity is not confined to unionists. It is also evident among supporters of independence. So his own supporters find him unpopular. Supporters of his party, that is, still find him, divisive and unpopular. A little less than half of those who voted yes in 2014 regard him favourably. So the majority of people who voted yes for independence don't like Humza Yousaf. Startling, isn't it? Curtis went on to say that the events of the past year have weakened the traditional link between support for Scottish independence and support for the SNP. Adding, above all, it has been tested by the outcome of a change of leadership that leaves the party without the charisma at the top that was provided by both Salmon and Sturgeon. I say Salmon has got charisma. Sturgeon, though, she could rule. She had political wit. For all her many problems, she was a consummate politician. She ruled. She had respect from her party. Last month, a poll published in the Sunday Times suggested that Labour was poised to overtake the SNP at the next Westminster election for the first time since 2010. The panel-based poll indicated that Sir Keir Starmer's party was in line to win 26 seats in Scotland, a big rise from what they have now, which is 1. If replicated at an election, the SNP would lose more than half of their 45 seats. The SNP pointed to a more recent poll by Redfield and Wilson Strategies, which showed that support for the party had risen 2 points to 37% at Westminster, and by 3 points in the Holyrood constituency vote to 36%, putting it ahead of Labour, but only bloody just, and it was way ahead not so long ago. Keith Brown, the party's deputy leader, said, "This poll shows that people across Scotland continue to back the SNP and our positive vision for Scotland." He's admitting 36% of people. That's not the majority of people across Scotland, is it? It's barely a third. They spin and they lie and they can't help themselves. But there he is. According to the country's leading pollster, he is the single reason the SNP are failing. Perhaps the people who read this and who are members of the SNP may feel it will be time soon for a little coup d'etat, a little change of leadership, and let Kate have a go. Couldn't do worse. Anyway, I should stop there and ground off and come up. I think the likes of Kate Forbes, Fergus Ewing and that will be looking at this and thinking happy thoughts. They'll be rubbing their hands in glee, in fact. And Kate may be looking around left and right to see if there's a possibility of maybe a stalking horse to lead a challenge against Humza Yousaf. And as soon as that challenge is laid by one person, she can come in, throw her hat in the ring and undoubtedly become leader. And I think Fergus Ewing would back Kate Forbes in a heartbeat, and he should obviously reward him. And I think that's the way that it's going to go, because there's so many problems lined up personally against Humza Yousaf, as well as politically, that his time is very limited, and I think he knows it. I think he is well aware that he is not going to be getting his arse into that seat for very much longer. And I can't wait to see it. I'd love another little challenge like that. See a party in disarray, especially a party like this, because the more they're in the disarray, the better. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit that subscribe button, and definitely do. We are building up the subscriber base a treat. I'd like to get to a certain number by the end of September, and I think it's entirely possible. All I need you to do is just hit that button. Ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video, and until next time, stay safe, stay well, and remember, if you've got a problem, blame it on Humza Yousaf. Bye.